Good morning, everybody. I'll make sure I got everybody's attention. I know it's a little crazy, and now we're at tables, and I just realized I put you facing each other. What made me think that you would ever turn around and pay attention again to me? So I'm going to encourage you to actually turn your chairs around and face this way. I want to welcome you all to 11:11, our celebration this morning. So how many of you actually read the emails we sent out this week? So how many of you had no idea what was happening when you walked in? All right, there you go. All right, communication. Okay. If you're not getting emails, if you didn't get it, then let us know, because we want to make sure we stay in communication with you. If you did get it and you just decided it was another one of those many, many emails that you get from the church and decided not to read, that's okay too. 11:11, if anything, is always about surprise and adaptation and improvisation. So I wasn't too worried about what we'd experience in here, and we'll have extra chairs setting up. So we're going to be worshiping at tables. It's Ascension Sunday, for those of you who didn't know, in the church's liturgy. This is the Sunday in which in Acts this tells the story of how the disciples were gathered and Jesus was taken up into heaven. Normally it's the 40 days after Easter, which is Thursday, and this would be Ascension Sunday, but we're really sort of not focused on Ascension Sunday today. Today is what I'm calling Palindrome Sunday. Obviously, we have no mathematicians or logicians in here, but it's 5/17/15, which has actually been a palindromatic week, if you think about it, because it's all week long. It's been palindromes, and it will be through the 19th. So you mess with that in your brain as we're going along. That'll give you something to think about and twiddle away. But we're also celebrating our community. That's why we have the tables set up. It's our first time to have a community lunch in a long time. We've had a number of visitors a number of new members who have joined. And so we're gathering just as a way of celebrating. So we hope we'll end up actually setting up a couple of more tables once we take a little break, and hope that you all can stay. It's a light lunch. We have nothing but cakes for dessert. The Savor Chef has prepared a light lunch for us. Elizabeth Wills and some of the band are going to be entertaining, and we'll do some stuff at the table for fun, and we'll be out of here by about 1:45 or 2, so we hope you can stick around for that. But we're glad that you're here to be a part of our worship this morning. So good to see everyone. If you're visiting too, make sure that you try to register your attendance. For everyone, do that, and then when you bring that up forward here in just a minute. Let's begin.
LA's fine, the sun shines most of the time, and the feeling is laid back. Palm trees grow and rents are low, but I got a feeling like I gotta start making my way back. I'm New York City born and raised, but nowadays I'm lost between two shores. LA's fine, but it ain't home. New York's home, but it ain't home no more. I am myself to no one there, and no one heard at all, not even the chair. I cried, I am, said I, and I have lost, and I don't even know why. Leaving me lonely still. Did you ever hear about the frog who dreamed about being a king and suddenly became one? Well, except for the names and a few other changes, if you talk about me, my story's the same one. But I have an emptiness deep inside, and I've tried, but it won't let me go. And I'm not a man who likes to swear, but I've never cared for the sound of being alone. I am myself, to no one there, and no one heard at all, not even the chair. I am my cry, I am, said I, and I am lost, and I can't even say why. I am myself, to no one there, and no one heard at all, not even the chair. I am my cry, I am, said I, and I am lost, and I can't even say why. Leaving me lonely still.
Well, we haven't done Neil Diamond in a long, long time. And I was talking to Penny. I looked around. I said, look at everybody singing Neil Diamond songs. That was awesome. But Brad and I were thinking about this theme this morning. And we're looking at the text of Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, where Jesus is telling the parable, the kingdom of heaven is like the one who stumbles in a field on a treasure. And this idea of who am I? What is life? What is my life like? What is life like living in this world in who I am? And it occurred to me that as I thought about this stumbling text, I started looking at something with Joseph Campbell. And Joseph Campbell had this wonderful line where he says, where you stumble and fall, we'll talk about it in a minute, but where you stumble and fall, that is where you often discover your treasure. So the idea I want to think with you about this morning is sometimes to find our most authentic self, who we are as our relationship with one another and in creation and with the holy. To find ourselves, sometimes who I am, I have to be willing to get in touch, even more lovingly so, with where I fall. Let's stand together. So let's have a word of prayer together. Holy One, we give thanks this morning for a chance to come together. We give thanks for the way in which the sky has unexpectedly given us a reprieve from the waters. And we are glad for rain, and we are glad for dryness. And we're glad for this community, for each of us here, and who we are individually, and even more so, who we have become and continue to become as a community. Bless us this morning. Amen. So let's sing together, and as we're singing, if you have an offering, make your way up here, drop off your name and registration and any offering. Let's sing together.
Y'all ready? Here we go. 'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come round where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, we will be in the garden of lovely life. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend, we shan't be ashamed to turn will be our delight, and by turning we come out right. Another verse here. 'Tis a gift to be living, 'tis a gift just to be, 'tis a gift no matter what our eyes may see. Though there may be times when we struggle and cry, we are sustained by the wonder of life. simplicity is gain. To bow and to bend, we shan't be ashamed. To turn, turn will be our delight, and by turning, turning, we come out right.
Today, this morning, instead of just sort of saying hello to one another, I want you to very quickly, briefly turn to someone, say hello to them, and welcome each other here. But then, very quickly, just tell each other where you first learned to ride a bike. And if you don't remember that, just your first experience with a bike. You only have about a minute or two each, so just turn to someone and tell them about your first bike experience. Okay, y'all find a seat now. You're talking enough now. Find a seat.
Sing a song about bicycles. Daisy, Daisy, tell me. I wish I could have heard each and every one of your bicycle stories. I bet that was really cool. Mine personally was in Bryan, Texas, and my mom made me wear a football helmet. It was awesome. If you'll follow along in your program for the reading from Matthew 13, 44 through 46, and then 51 through 52. God's kingdom is like a treasure hidden in a field for years, and then a trespasser stumbles upon it. The finder is ecstatic. What a find. And he proceeds to sell everything he owns to raise money and buy that field. Or, God's kingdom is like a jewel merchant on the hunt for excellent pearls. Finding one that is flawless, she immediately sells everything and she buys it. Jesus asked, "Are you starting to get a handle on all this?" And they all answered, "Yes." He said, "Then you see how every student well trained in God's kingdom is like the owner of a general store who can put her hands on anything you need, old or new, exactly when you need it."
Y'all can join in singing, please.
sweet blessing. Tune my heart to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnet sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mount I'm fixed upon it, bound of thy redeeming love. Oh, to grace, how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. Let thy goodness like a fetter bind my wandering heart to thee. Prone to wonder how I feel it, the earth, view, and sky above, faced with risk to any danger, I live onward in thy love. Oh, to grace, how great a debtor daily I am constrained to be. Let thy goodness like a fetter bind my wandering heart to thee. Prone to wonder how I feel it, live below and sky above, faced with risk to any danger, I live onward in thy love.
I'll let Brad just continue along with the guitar. And I'm going to invite everyone, just where you are, just to close your eyes, to get comfortable. And with me, take a few deep breaths, just as deep, and to let them out slowly. Just take this opportunity to breathe deeply, find a centering place, to let go of all of the confusion, the week's busyness, the anxieties, the mysteries. Just let it all go and be present. It can be said that each of us find ourselves many times maybe caught up in self-blame or disappointment. We find fault with ourselves, we find fault with others. In many ways, it occurs to me, these are like fault lines in our lives. Perhaps some come to mind, but I invite you just to be present. Allow those lines to be present and just to let go for now. Holy One, how we long to find those fields where we might stumble upon joy, where we might stumble upon something deeper that connects us. And yet we know that it is there, it is here. Teach us to stumble with courage and with grace and with attention. That what we stumble upon are not the fault lines we've created for ourselves, but the joy and depth of life that lies just beneath our every step. Amen.
As a little girl, I came down to the water with a little stone in my hand. It would shimmer and sing, and we knew everything. As a little girl, I came down, but in a little while, I got steeped in authority. Heaven only knows what went wrong. There is nothing so cruel than to bury that jewel when it was mine all along, and I'm gonna find it. You're shining, I can see you. You're smiling, that's enough, and I'm holding on to you like a diamond in the rough. Every now and then I can see that I'm getting somewhere. Where I have to go is so deep. I was angry back then, and you know I still am. I have lost too much sleep, but I'm gonna find it. You're shining, I can see you. You're smiling, that's enough, and I'm holding on to you like a diamond in the rough, like a diamond in the rough. Snakes in the grass, better step on the gas.
Snakes in the grass, better step on the gas.
Snakes in the grass, better step on the gas.
Snakes in the grass, better step on the gas.
In my dreams, I go down by the water with a little girl in my arms. We would shimmer and sing, and we knew everything. In my dreams, I go down.
Go down.
I go down. You're shining, I can see you. You're smiling, that's enough, and I'm holding on to you like a diamond in the rough, like a diamond in the rough, like a diamond in the rough, like a diamond in the rough. Snakes in the grass, better step on the gas.
Snakes in the grass, better step on the gas.
Snakes in the grass, better step on the gas.
Snakes in the grass, better step on the gas.
So, how many of you have had that experience? You're about to learn something new, something a little challenging, and someone says, there's nothing to it. It's like riding a bicycle. How many of you remember riding the bicycle for the first time? Now, some of you taught yourself, and I didn't. My father taught me, and I even had training wheels, but still I fell. Even with the training wheels, it was a Stingray. I invite you to go check out, I wrote about it in a blog post this past week. I invite you to go check out the whole story about that. What I want to suggest to you, though, is that life is not like riding a bicycle. That in fact, most of us are not so sage-like and mystical that we can sort of glide balanced and easily through life day after day. There's always something that's going to trip us up. And the medieval monks, when they were asked how they would practice their faith, they often replied, "We learn by falling down and getting up." It's pretty much how life is. I think it was Einstein. Well, did we already pass the Einstein quote? Yeah. What was that Einstein said? Because my father had said this to me too. Life's like riding a bike. To stay in balance, you have to keep moving. Again, not always the case. Depending on where our fault lines are and where we've laid them for ourselves, we might keep moving, but we're not always paying attention. We're not always aware of our own booby traps, our own self-sabotage, and sometimes moving can be almost the worst thing we can do. I want to suggest what Joseph Campbell had said. I want to read something from his collection. Let's see where this went. This was from Diane Osborne, who had an interview with him and called Reflections on the Art of Living, a Joseph Campbell companion. I just stumbled on this because I was looking at this text from the Gospel of Matthew. And then I realized after looking at the song that Brad and I had picked out at the beginning of the week, again, the song speaks so much to this text as well. Campbell says, it's by going down. It is by going down into the abyss that we recover the treasures of life. Where you stumble, there lies your treasure. The very cave you are afraid to enter turns out to be the source of what you are looking for. That thing in the cave that was so dreaded has now become the center, and you find the jewel, and it draws you off. In loving the mystery, you cannot despise the earthly. I think life is a lot like falling down, and it's a lot like getting up. It's a lot like remembering, and it's a lot like forgetting. And you know those moments where you've forgotten something for years. A good friend of mine, well, a good acquaintance of mine, a storyteller up in Chicago, an amazing man by the name of Sid Lieberman, passed away this past week. I hadn't been in touch with him for a couple of years. We had lunch when I was up there a few years back, he and some other friends. One of these core individuals in sort of the renaissance of storytelling back in the 80s. That had had such an influence across the nation, even worked with NASA and some of its narrative development and helping them create a story that sort of branded who they are. Sid Lieberman was an amazing Jewish person, loved story and myth. And as I was thinking about Sid Lieberman, I began to remember. Isn't that what we do? When we start thinking, when something triggers something in our minds, we begin to remember. We don't always remember exactly how it happened either. But what we do remember starts to pull pieces together. We piece our lives together, I think, by forgetting and remembering, by falling and by getting back up. The gospel refers to it this way, that the kingdom is like someone walking in or trespassing. It wasn't their field. They were walking in someone else's field and then stumbling on a treasure. It's sort of something that you commit to once you discover it, but it's not a once and all for all reality. The reality is that we're up and we're down, and the challenge is not getting stuck in where we fall. Mark Nepo, I don't know if you all have read Mark Nepo. Mark Nepo is a wonderful writer and a very deep and spiritual writer. I encourage you to check him out some. But he writes that sometimes this valley is a place of self-loathing. Sometimes this valley is a place of fault-finding. It can be fault-finding with ourselves. I myself am very familiar with this valley. It's easy, I think, sometimes to criticize ourselves, to constantly remind ourselves that we haven't matched up or we haven't met up to our expectations. And if it's not there, then it's easy for us to find fault with others and carry it around like a familiar backpack. We get painfully stalled because of our fault finding. That gap between who we think we are to be and who we think we actually are. And it's somewhat like a geological kind of relationship when you think about it. We do create fault lines. And as Joseph Campbell would suggest, the only way we really get in touch with those fault lines that we have laid ourselves is to begin to embrace them. So I want to talk with you about just three examples of how we fall. I suspect some of you can identify with some of them. I know I identify with all of them. The first one's a familiar one because I want to talk with you about Saul. Saul, Paul the apostle. Saul of Tarsus. Very simple story. Many of you might know this story. Saul was a Jew born in the year 3 A.D. thereabouts, born in Jerusalem, raised in a Pharisaic family, raised in a very strict law-abiding Jewish family. By the time the Christian communities were coming along, Saul made his point and purpose to persecute and to arrest and imprison and even kill Christians. He was an avid hunter of Christians. And then he has that familiar experience. On the road to Damascus, he's suddenly struck dumb, as in the scripture it says, by the one whom he had pursued. He is struck blind and no longer can see by the very one he was persecuting. A way of thinking about this personally might be he was struck blind and suddenly by the very prejudice that motivated and moved his life. In a sense, you might say that his falling was caused externally. But if we think of our own things that we hang on to, our own biases that we hang on to, our own stories that we carry around about ourselves that influence and prejudice how we feel about ourselves, much less how we feel about others, if we think about that, it's not happening externally. Perhaps it finally comes that the fault line has grown so wide and so unavoidable that we too are struck blinded by our own bias. We're forced to see with the eyes of the very bias that we hold. And in doing that, perhaps there's an opportunity for transformation. Because for Paul, of course, it transformed the way in which he looked at everyone around him. Anyone who's been knocked off their high horse and who's welcomed it, that's the key, right? But anyone who's been knocked off their high horse and welcomed the sudden imbalance, surely they recognize, as you might have experienced yourself, you recognize seeing the world in a new way. And you discover at our hearts, we're all the same. There's another way in which we fall, and this is what I call the flat-out self-induced one. You can go back to that picture now. Yeah, this is just a metaphor, but I'll give you the scenario. You might have done this. I'm guilty of this all the time. I have a deep story in the back of my head that reminds me that in order to do something, I have to prove myself. Sometimes it's with the simplest things like I'm leaving Central Market and the person is behind the counter and I look at her and I say, no worries, I can bag my own groceries. And I begin to bag the groceries. And she looks at me and she says, well, you might need some more groceries. And I'm thinking, no, because I can carry all of these groceries if I bag them just right. And then I see the people standing around me, and I'm not egotistical, I won't say that, but at the same time I'm thinking I can show people just how well that if you really plan ahead, if you're really organized, or as I was told in Germany when I was visiting there and didn't bring my bag, and the guy says, well, maybe you brought change, but you didn't plan, because you're supposed to bring your own bags when you go shopping in Germany. I had that same sense of which if you plan ahead, if you get everything organized, it will work. And soon enough, I'm picking up the groceries, 2 bags in one hand, a 6-pack of that bottled water in the other hand, and then balancing another little item on my finger with a little strap there. I've got all of these things, and I walk out the door opens, and someone says something, and the bag rips. right? Surely some of you have been there. Like my son trying to show me just how well he can balance the bucket of paint and the paintbrush on the 5th step of the ladder. And it all comes crashing down as he tries to turn and keep that balance. The reality is we have a lot of self-induced falls. We try to balance a lot of things in our life. We try to balance a lot of our opinions, a lot of the stories that we feel compelled to project about ourselves. And sometimes those compelling stories, in order to keep them balanced, have to have more stories that support that. And then the criticisms that continue to support those that need to support those stories we tell. Perhaps we're trying to balance too many things in our life in so many different ways. Perhaps it's the pains that we experience. Sometimes it's difficult to get through the door when you're trying to balance it all. I've told that story in here before about the man from Crete. The fellow, the one Cretan story. In fact, I first learned it from Sid Lieberman a long time ago. But this story, simply, the short version of it, was that the man in Crete, Crete's an island south of Greece, he was so proud of his country. The whole country centered around its pride, its sense of community and identity. He was so proud of that when he died, he swore that no one around him, he made everyone around him swear that they would not force him to let go of the soil that he wanted to be buried with. So he clung to some soil in his fist. He died, and they placed him in the casket, his hand clenching still to the soil. Rigor mortis, just fist clenching it. In heaven, as the story goes, when he got to the gates, Peter was there, wouldn't let him in. Peter said, "You can't come in here. You're holding on to stuff. You can't come in if you keep holding on to stuff." He couldn't let go of it because it was too important. What in your life is so important that you can't let go of? What fault lines even have become so important that for some reason we can't even let go of those stories, even if they're self-sabotaging, even when they're self-destructive? How hard it is for us to let go of all of that. And so for eons, it says that this fellow would not let go of it. He watched people pass by. Some of his drinking buddies came out and said, we got a great bar in here, it could be a lot of fun if you just let go of that. And he's like, no, this is my identity. I am not letting go of this is me. I'm not letting go. And he stayed out there. Then his granddaughter, finally, eons later, granddaughter comes out, little girl, she comes out and she smiles at him and she says, please come in. And he's overwrought with just this wonderful sense of emotion. Just a moment of lapsing, he weakens his grip. Instead, she reaches in and grabs the hand, and the two of them walk through the gate. And of course, the first thing he sees on the other side is his island of Crete. And isn't that the way of it? Isn't that the treasure so often along those fault lines that we so delicately try to balance, that we try to keep in line, that we cling to? In reality, the holy in our midst, the eternal in our midst, is constantly reminding us to let go a little bit so that we might experience even the deeper joy, even in the most difficult moments. Show that next picture up there, if you can, Austin. Anybody recognize this? No? Kimball Art Museum aficionados? This is this near, I'm going to pronounce this incorrectly, Sydenham Hill, which is a suburb of South London, back in the mid-1800s. It's painted by the Impressionist painter Camille Pissarro. It's on one of the permanent collections at the Kimball. When I saw this painting, my wife's a huge fan of Impressionist art, and I've become a little bit more so over the years because she loves to go. When the Bass collection was there, they had this wonderful portion of it that was all about Impressionist, post-Impressionist artists, and so we just spent hours there in the exhibit just walking around. But I was fascinated with the story about Pissarro that came before this painting. He grew up in France, but he grew up during the Franco-Prussian War. And it was during that war that he was forced to leave. He was approximately 40 years of age. He had stayed to the very last because for 30 years he had painted as many as 1,500 canvases. And he kept them all around him in his barn. And he wouldn't leave. He was finally forced to leave as the Prussian soldiers were overtaking his village. And he left everything. He had to get out of there for his life. When he finally came back about 7 months later, after having lived in London, the whole village was decimated. The barn had been burned down. There were soldiers that had been using his canvases as floor mats, as cloths. There was apparently a local farm worker who was actually washing out blood with one of his canvases, he says in his narrative. Just imagine 1,500 of your creations completely destroyed. There were something like 30 pieces left. According to the stories, it devastated him, but he went back to London and began to find other people who loved art like himself, who pursued art, because it was very questionable for his period. So he ended up running into Cézanne, he ended up running into Manet, he ended up making friends with Van Gogh, and pretty soon he founded the first Impressionistic Society. And at the age of 42 began painting again. And what we have now are the last 30 years of Pissarro's life. But the one thing that story taught me, like so many people that I've met over the years and so many encounters I've had, some of you in here and some with my work at camps, at some point, people who experience such loss realize that these kind of falls are opportunities because they've learned that all of life is always a beginning. All of life is always a new beginning. So I want to give this thought here for a conclusion. I ran across, I know we read a lot of Mary Oliver in here. And I found this poem in one of her collections that I had not read before, and I thought it just speaks to this so well, so nicely. There are many ways to perish or to flourish. How old pain, for example, can stall us at the threshold of function. Still, friends, consider stone that is without the fret of gravity. Consider water that is without anxiety. And the pine trees that never forget their recipe for renewal, and the female wood duck who is looking this way and that way for her children, and the snapping turtle who is also looking this way and that way. Consider always, every day, the determination of the grass which grows despite its unending obstacles. I'd like to think sometimes that I'm a stoic. I've actually wrestled with that many times. I've had in the back of my mind this sort of stoic philosophy, this almost Zen-like suffering is attachment. If we don't hold on to the judgments aren't there. If we see the suffering as not suffering, the suffering isn't there. But my heart, if I'm honest with myself, my heart tells me that's simply trying to dance around the fault lines. That in reality, sometimes the only way to truly learn from falling is by embracing and loving our way through it. I invite the band to get ready as I make this last suggestion. There are many ways to fall. The harder practice is getting up. At the heart of all of our fault lines and the places where we often fall, there is still, if we're willing to settle, if we're willing to lean in to the curve, so to speak, if we're willing to rest with the vibrations that sometimes shake our foundations. There still an ever-present quiet voice that speaks beneath the pain or our self-doubt or our fault lines, and even in our failed sense of dreaming. A voice that suggests that if we pay attention to where we stumble, we will discover that the best chance to be whole is to love whatever gets in the way. And when we learn to do that, we begin not just to fill the fault lines with that sense of love, but the world around us.
Everybody, everybody,
Fill this world
yeah,
with
you
love.
gotta fill the world with love.
Fill this world with love.
Yeah, fill this world with love. Yeah. Ooh, yeah. You gotta fill it. Gotta fill this world with love. Yeah.
So the band's going to bring it down just a little bit. We're going to just keep playing. I feel like I could have an altar call or something maybe right now.
Brother Tom is in the house.
If you're feeling it right now, I hear name in. We're feeling it. So here's what I'd like to do. I know we have a couple of folks that we want to welcome into our community that are joining this morning. Going to invite Linda and Kirk to come forward. And we'll just stand here with me in just a second. Oh, no, y'all can come on forward now. I'm sorry. And is Sammy in here? Sammy, are you? Ah, there we are. Yeah, Sammy and Jimmy Dunn they're good. They know them well. I didn't know this, that Linda is also an artist and a muralist and has done a mural for Sammy Dunn's place. And so it's so good to have all of them coming back together again. Her whole wall is all painted up. So we're going to have her do some stuff here. We want to welcome them in just a minute. But Sammy and, Linda and Kirk are joining by transfer from another United Methodist Church. So I'm going to step away from this mic. Okay, Austin? It's then what we ask everyone who comes and joins our community and joins this church, the same question. Linda and Kirk, will you continue to uphold this United Methodist Church and this community with your prayers, your presence, your gifts, and your services?
Yes.
Yes.
And we're so glad to have both of you all with us here officially. They've been visiting for some time. They've come from another Methodist church in the giant Metroplex area. So we're going to have a time to have some lunch together here in just a minute. I'm going to invite everyone to stand up. Krista's going to keep singing. Y'all are invited to clap along and sing. Unbeknownst to you, folks will be coming through with food and laying it all up along the tables. If you're going to stick around and have lunch, which I hope you will, we'll set up an extra table or two as well. There'll be name tags. We're going to have some fun getting to know one another. But just mill around until we get it all situated. The band will be playing and such. But we're going to have a blessing with the music going. So let's bow our heads together. Maybe even take somebody's hand beside you. Holy One, we are thankful. We are thankful for this community. We are thankful for the fault lines. We know that sometimes we get ourselves so caught up in the very pits that we fall within that we've forgotten the treasures that lie in our learning to embrace those challenges, to embrace the obstacles. Bless us as we go forth from this place, as we continue to be this community beyond these walls, as we continue to be the kingdom. We pray this in the name of your love and of the treasure that you bring to us in every moment. Amen. So y'all stick around, sing a little bit, mill around, and we'll have lunch in about 15 minutes. Thanks for being up here. Yeah. So
To the office and get the pictures and stuff. Should I do that now?
that might be the time to do it now and then come on back.
L-O-V-E, love.
Yeah, we just got some information.
L-O-V-E,
Great. So good to have you. Then we
L-O-V-E,
can get
love.
into the people at the table.
I said, he, yeah.
L-O-V-E, love.
Okay, good.
Whoa,
Be a good week.
yeah,
V,
Okay. Look forward to it.
yeah, be love. Oh,
V,
yeah, L-O-V-E, love. Oh, I said, oh, yeah, be,
Are y'all sticking
yeah,
L-O-V-E, love.
I think it is. I mean, just find a place and wherever you're comfortable. I have no idea who's sticking around, so thank you. Thank you very much. I do. A little before 2. That'd be awesome. Thanks. Try to remember that.
Yeah, we neither.
think I am. I just keep forgetting. Yeah. Let me make sure they know what they're doing, and I'll be right back. Hello. Hi. Good to see you. So is this going to be enough room? Is this going to be enough room for everything in the cakes too?